How It Feels to Love You Lately. That was probably, thinking back now, it's probably the second track I wrote for Fabric. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. I just started writing some demos, backing tracks, things like that. And I'm pretty sure this was the second one, and it always really stood out to me. It always had sort of like a certain atmosphere that I really, really enjoyed. And you know, the sounds are sort of like sparseness of the verses, but then, you know, really quite heavy in the choruses. I really liked that. It sort of reminded me a lot of music that I used to listen to growing up. So yeah, I think that's sort of like initially where the idea came from. It was, you know, it was called Tomorrow back then, and it had sort of different lyrical ideas and things, similar melodies at times, but, you know, different things happening. And I remember it was one of those ones that I was never fully happy with it, but I really liked the idea, so it just evolved over time. You know, thinking back now, when I sent the demo to Russ, I remember, I think from his side, he sort of thought the same thing. He really liked the atmosphere and the vibe of the track. It just needed a little bit more doing to it to bring it into like the sort of Fabric reality sound. So I remember sort of redoing the backing track and just sort of making it more extreme, sort of like really quite quiet and sparse in the verses, and then really quite, you know, aggressive and loud in the choruses. And I think that really sort of tied it together musically, really. And then particularly like when I've sent it back to Russ, and he's had a chance to add his additions to it. Lyrically, it's got a positive message, but the actual story where it comes from is actually from one of the most dark times of my life, actually. I was living in Leeds a few years back, and a few things had gone wrong, made a few mistakes, not dealt with things the way I should have done, and got myself into a bit of a rut, you know, sort of hit rock bottom kind of thing, you know, sort of like gone to that dark place. And I remember when I was writing the lyrics, I'd had an old melody to the track, and I thought, you know what, it needs just a complete fresh look. And it must have just been sort of fate or whatever at that time that I decided to work on this track, because at that point I was sort of in the state where it could really come together. So I remember this one night, I was sort of, you know, at the end of my tether, really, just had enough of everything, really fed up, and, you know, down in the dumps. And I'd gone home back to the Isle of Axholme from Leeds, and I'd sort of get myself settled down that night, chilled out. Next day, my family were going to go on a day trip to Scarborough, which is sort of a northern east coast resort sort of town, small town sort of thing, in the north of England. I remember sort of, you know, just being so like out of it, just not knowing like what was going on. But anyway, we go on, you know, having really cool chats in the car, you know, getting things out there, starting to feel a little bit better. And I just sort of remember that day, I was hanging around with my little niece and nephew, and, you know, getting on donkey rides, you know, all the sort of typical sort of British coastal things, and it just really helped me almost to see colour again. Like, you know, without knowing it, they saved my life, really. You know, not just that day, but, you know, everything they've done for me has just been amazing. So the song sort of meaning is me talking about how, you know, they saved me from drowning in my own self. They've dragged me from the river, or, you know, the frozen lake, they've dragged me out of it. Where I was just sort of going down into the abyss, and my family, you know, they pull me out of that. And I think for me, I've always found it hard to express like how I'm feeling, or like what I think about people, or like how I feel about people, and particularly the ones I love. So it's like, it was my way of trying to explain to them like how much it meant to me, what they did for me. Um, so yeah, you know, it's got it, to me, it's probably the most personal song I've ever wrote. Definitely up there with like, you know, with that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, that's sort of loosely what How I Feel to Love You Lately is about.